NBA Finals, Oklahoma City and Indiana. That opens up on Thursday. Before we unpack the series itself, this is the first time in NBA Finals history where we've had two teams that have been in the 20th media markets or smaller. These are the very definition of small market teams. As far as NBA markets, I believe Indiana is the 9th smallest market. I think Oklahoma City's third smallest market. So you have got two small market teams for the first time really ever. You've had, Denver and Miami from a couple of years ago were smallish, but Miami, I think, was inside the top 20. And you often will have a San Antonio and Oklahoma City in the past in the finals, but they have always been buoyed by Golden State, Boston, finals, traditional market teams. Is this a good thing? Because this is what the question the NBA is going to be asked a lot over the next couple of weeks. Is this a good thing for the league to have two small market teams?
I think it's a great thing. I understand financially why you wouldn't want to have it happen every year. And by the way, I say financially because emotionally, it's great to see any team make it to the NBA Finals and any fan base or franchise get to experience this. But financially, I don't know if it makes sense if they were going to have this every year. But once in a while, I actually think this is very good for the NBA. Not only do I think it's not bad, I think it's actively good. I think it is important sometimes to have an NBA Finals that is for the hoop heads. It's for the authentic people who actually love basketball, who understand how good SGA is, who understand what a thing of beauty it is to watch Oklahoma City's defense, who love watching the sort of pace and transition game of the Pacers and sort of what Tyrese Halliburton can do, to reward people who appreciate that level of basketball as opposed to is Steph Curry playing and who's launching three-pointers. I think it's good for the league to be able to reward the core fan base and say, we're going to get to watch this beautiful level of basketball played with two teams that have really interesting hoop head type of authentic storylines. I think it's good. I think if it's just sort of the biggest tent all the time, I don't think you're really keeping that core in the same way you are with a series like this.
So short term, it's going to be ugly. The numbers are not going to be good.
No.
They're not.
But that's okay.
Right, yeah, and I'll get to that. But you saw in the Western Conference semifinals, or the conference finals, rather, Oklahoma City and Minnesota, some of the worst numbers we've seen in years.
Right.
And some of that had to do with the games weren't competitive. Game 3 wasn't competitive. Game 5 wasn't competitive. That factors into it. But the numbers were really bad. And I think the numbers in this series are going to be really bad. That said, I lean towards more your opinion that over the long term, this is going to be good for the NBA. For starters, the NBA, there's no fallout for the NBA to having bad numbers. They have a new TV deal. We just talked about 11 years, $75 billion. This could be watched by you, me, and our families, and the NBA wouldn't care because they're still going to get their checks next season. And we have seen in the past where guys from smaller markets or lesser-known guys, they get opportunities on stages like this. Look, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the MVP. You know he's great. I know he's great. Does some guy watching the game in New York that doesn't see a lot of Shai, does he know he's great? Well, he's going to get a good look. Does somebody up in Fresno who doesn't watch much NBA, who tunes into the finals, he's going to get a good look at Shai? I think there's going to be a trickle-down effect for guys like Shai, guys like Halliburton, guys like Jalen Williams, guys like Miles Turner, who are going to get the most eyeballs on them that they've ever had, that's going to help them next season, and it's going to help the NBA over the long term. And I do think long term, having not just two small market teams, but the potential for 4 small market teams and 5 small market. Look, 3 of the final 4 teams were small market teams. Throw Minnesota into that mix. I think long term, this kind of parity is going to be good for the NBA. There's going to be some short-term pain. They're going to take some arrows over the next couple of weeks from the usual suspects. They're going to say, well, nobody wants to watch the NBA because these ratings are going to be bad. They're going to be compared to like Celtics against Warriors. They're going to be compared to the Lakers series, compared to the Warriors dynasty. But long-term, I think it's probably a good thing that there's a level of unpredictability in the NBA playoffs that we've never seen before.
I just think you have to think of bad for who. Right? They're going to be bad. Bad for who? Bad for what? Right? So
for TV networks, probably.
But that's a little bit of a boogeyman, right? This whole discussion is sort of in some ways something to discuss. To your point, it's not bad for the NBA. The NBA is going to make just as much money walking out of these finals as they would if it was Celtics Lakers, and so it's not bad for the NBA in terms of financially. It's not bad for NBA fans because if you again are a hardcore basketball fan, it's actually good for you. This might be better than having to deal deal with some of the do I have to see the this of that again? I mean, hardcore basketball fans are constantly complaining about the way TV networks all it is Steph and LeBron. I never see anyone else. Well, here's your chance to see someone else. If you're a sports fan who's not interested because it's Pacers Thunder and it just doesn't float your boat, okay, don't watch. That's okay. It's not bad for them. It's not like, man, I don't have the NBA in my life. If you want it, turn it on. If you don't, go fishing. I mean, you have other options out there in the world. It's not bad for the teams, right? So it's not bad for them. There is one entity, this is, quote, bad for, ESPN, ABC. And guess what? The Walt Disney Company made $91 billion last year. That was the revenue they reported. $91 billion. They're going to be okay, too. So even if the ratings aren't great, and even if because of that they don't draw a lot of advertising money, everyone's going to be okay. I just think it's a little bit of a boogeyman sort of false thing in the room of this is really bad. Bad for who? It's bad for one company that's going to do just fine.
Yeah, that part I agree with. I think what makes it worse for that one company, as we segue to the series, is that it might not be a long series. It might be a short series, Rachel. Oklahoma City is a huge favorite coming into the series. They are minus 700 according to DraftKings, which is the 7th largest NBA Finals betting line ever. The Thunder won both the games against Indiana this season, winning close on the road. They blew out Indiana at home. Didn't have Chet Holmgren either for either of those games. I don't want this podcast to be about disrespecting the Indiana Pacers. I want to make that clear right at the top. They were 30-1 to win the Eastern Conference. They did that. They beat the Bucks. They beat the Cavs. They beat the Knicks. They beat the teams in front of them. They have a true superstar in Tyrese Halliburton, who is the breakout star of this postseason, no question. But I am struggling to identify a path to victory for the Indiana Pacers. Everything Indiana does, Oklahoma City does either a little bit better or a lot better. They play fast, Oklahoma City plays faster. They have a great lead guard, Oklahoma City has the best lead guard in the world. They have a parade of reliable defenders. Meet the law firm of Dort, Caruso, and Wallace, who are like the best trio of defenders we've seen in the NBA. The Thunder were number 1 in the NBA in net rating. Indiana was 13.
Yep.
So let's start here. Do you see a path to victory for the Indiana Pacers?
I don't. That doesn't mean that there isn't one, but no. And look, here's the thing. When unlikely teams win series, it's because, quote, things happen that we cannot predict or expect. Sometimes it's an injury, knock on all the wood. I don't want to see anyone injured, but if there is a major injury on one side or the other, it will change the equation of these NBA Finals. If there is some crazy in the San Antonio Spurs played the Miami Heat and the air conditioning in the building wasn't working. You can have your theories on how or why, but it changed the game. LeBron James cramps up and the best player at the time in the world is out of the game. That changes what we expected from that basketball game. Tyrese Halliburton in game 1 against the New York Knicks hits a shot that bounces up into the literal rafters and happens to come down through the bucket, right? I mean, with the Kawhi shot a few years ago. I mean, we see these things that we couldn't possibly expect. So do a series of those things have to happen for the Pacers to win? Yeah, probably. But also, we've seen it happen. It's not like we haven't. So is there a path? Yes. Could I sit here and tell you what it is right now? Not possible, because it would take, to me, one of those sort of unusual, unpredictable things. Just SGA's numbers alone, in the 2 games they played against the Pacers, he averaged 39 points, 7 rebounds, 8 assists, shot 56% overall, made 7 of his 11 three-point attempts, and 21 of 23 of his free throws. He plays well against Indiana.
Good.
He's good, and he plays well against this team. So I just think, to your point, you can sit there and go through point by point of all the different things the Thunder do and that they do well. The Pacers, I think, are going to give us some really fun games. To me, this might end up a little bit like the MVP vote. Right? So we spent the last half of the season talking about, oh my gosh, SGA and Jokic, it's neck and neck. It's so close. They're both doing these spectacular things so well. I'm so torn. It's going to come down to the most minute category and making my decision. I'm going, 15 categories in when I normally only have to go 8 to pick an MVP. And yet when you got to the actual vote, it was 70-30?
Yeah.
It wasn't close in terms of the voting. So while individual voters may have had real, heartbreakingly razor-thin moments of how to vote, a big chunk of them only broke one way. I think that these games might have these razor-thin, heartbreaking sort of, oh my gosh, hairline moments of who wins. but it might be 4 in a row for the Thunder, or maybe 5 out of 6. Maybe we get to a game 6.
Look, that's what the Pacers experienced in the conference finals last year against Boston. 3 of those games of a sweep were decided by 5 points or less. They were competitive in them. They just couldn't push it over the line. I just think Indiana needs like a perfect storm to happen. Like, they need this series to be a track meet. They got to play up and down every single possession, made baskets, throw the ball up the floor, organized chaos. They need Halliburton shooting low to mid 40s from 3-point range, being aggressive, and that's going to be tough. Like we saw in that series against the Knicks, when Halliburton was squared off with Mikal Bridges, he didn't get aggressive. He often kind of resigned himself to not getting the ball or not being able to be his usual aggressive self. And look, he's not a great one-on-one player to begin with. Like statistically, his isolation numbers are not spectacular. Now he's going to be faced with Lou Dort, his most physical defensive player in the league. Alex Caruso, one of the smartest defensive players in the league. Casey Wallace, a little bit of both. They got 3 guys that are going to find ways to take Halliburton out of his game. The Thunder give up a lot of corner threes. Like, is this a Thomas Bryant series? Like Neesmith standing in the corner, making a bunch of threes?
I mean, that is certainly part of the game plan for Indiana. I expect Tyrese Halliburton to have some great moment during the series. I'm excited for that. I'm expecting Rick Carlisle to do something really smart and cagey and sort of, something that throws the Thunder off their feet for possibly even a whole game, if not, 3 quarters. But I just don't know if in the aggregate it is enough to add up to either a Pacers win or even an extension to 6 or 7 games in this series.
I'll tell you what could get them there. Miles Turner, who did not play well in those 2 games against Oklahoma City. Averaged 11 points per game, 31% from the floor, 14% from 3. He needs to have a monster series. They've got a bunch of guys in Indiana having great 3-point shooting playoffs. They've got 7 guys averaging better than 40% from 3 in the playoffs. Miles Turner needs to be a difference maker in this series. He's got to outplay Chet Holmgren. He's got to play Isaiah Hartenstein off the floor because he's too much of a threat from the perimeter. To me, Miles Turner's the one guy that could throw a wrinkle into all this. If he plays over his head, if he plays to an all-star level, he might be a difference maker.
Do you have any Jalen Williams questions still?
Oh, I've given those up. But he was like, and I wrote this in the magazine back in April before the playoffs. Like, Oklahoma City believed, and they believed top to bottom, that they were ready for a playoff run. They believed in Shea. They believed that their experience last year could push them in a positive direction. The one wild card they didn't really know about was Jalen Williams. And he's shown he's good to go. Like, his numbers in deciding games, that Game 5 against Minnesota, the way he played against Denver in Game 7, like, he has shown up in big moments. And I've been around this team for a few days now. Like, they are like basketball Prozac. Like, nothing seems to be rattling them at all. Like, it's not like an indifference, but they know the task at hand. Like, they know the assignment here. They're not happy to be here. Like, they're not like, and I don't think Indiana's happy to be here either. But I think Oklahoma City came into this postseason believing it was championship or bust, and they're not there yet. And they still believe, they're still operating like there's work to be done.
No, 100%. Apparently, that's how the New York Knicks feel, too. It's championship or bust because they fired their coach.
That's too bad. Last thing for you is a championship for either team right now.
Yes.
Who gets elevated the most with a championship? Like, who sees their reputation, their resume, what gets burnished? Who gets their stuff burnished the most with a world championship?
I think SGA. I don't think there's any question. I mean, the Thunder in general, but I think the Thunder's place in American sports right now is what it is, whether they win or not. I think they're seen as young and gritty and, fun college-y team vibe, and Oklahoma City's games, aren't they so great, how everyone stands until the bucket, and look at everybody in their T-shirts. I think that whole image of the Thunder is there, and I think if they win, that's just going to be amplified. But I think SGA will be given that entree into that higher level of not just being an NBA star, but being an American sports star. And so I think he has the most to benefit here. And, Tyrese Halliburton, I think, is a really fun story. I think in playing against the Knicks in that huge media market, I think that he already got that shine. I think that people who didn't know Tyrese Halliburton existed before 2 weeks ago? No, now. I'm not sure the NBA Finals is going to change that. And maybe, again, if they can win, if the Pacers win and it's because Tyrese hits the series of, and crazy, credible shots, yes, he gets elevated too. But I don't think he's close enough to the door. SGA is knocking on the door of not just NBA stardom, but American sports stardom. And when I say American, by the way, I know he's Canadian, but I mean in the American sports universe. And I think this will propel him past that door. What do you think?
I agree with SGA. I think once you win an MVP, you enter a rarefied air. And then it's about climbing over the other guys that are in that rarefied air. You get a championship, that moves you one rung up the ladder. Now you start talking about the potential of being in the all-time great conversation. You do it a couple of times. A few more times, you're talking Mount Rushmore. You put yourself into the mix. I think a world championship would be, keep saying world championship. Some of the guys over in Europe don't like when we say that. NBA championship puts them.
Was it Noah Lyles?
And Noah Lyles, why do you call him NBA champion? Yeah, that's a good one. The only other guy I would say would get elevated would be Carlisle, because
he's already a Hall of Famer, no?
He is, but I mean, how many coaches have won championships with two different teams? And to do it 14 years apart, that's pretty impressive.
Yes.
I could do it with the Dallas Mavericks and Dirk Nowitzki, who play one way, and do it with the Indiana Pacers and Tyrese Halliburton, who play a completely different way. That'd be a feather in his cap.
That's been kind of fun watching people realize about Rick Carlisle, by the way, because we talked about going into the Pacers-Knicks series, like, oh, these two old school coaches, and they are old school coaches, both of them, certainly in demeanor and, being around the game and all the principles that they bring in there. But Rick Carlisle has shown himself over and over, not just this year, but to be adaptable in a way that Tibbs, frankly, hasn't been. And I think getting to see Rick in action, he maximizes every team he has. I've covered Rick for a long time, so have you. Mm-hmm. He changes up his style. He sees the opportunities with his roster. He maximizes each part of his roster, each sort of dynamic of the way his team can play, and evolves over the season as he watches what they can do. And that was fun for me in the Knicks series to get so many people noticing and seeing, oh, now look what they're doing. Now look at what Rick is doing. Someone who enjoys watching him coach. I thought that was fun, and I was excited to see him get that recognition.
So the finals could theoretically go until June 22nd. What do you think the odds are that Rick at Media Day says we're on day one of 18?
Of 18. So you have to explain that to people who might not have been there the day you and I were when they started the Knicks series, and they won game one in the most spectacular comeback, breathtaking, oh my God, the entire building didn't even know what hit it, and Rick Carlisle comes out and goes, it's day one of 13.
One of 13. Now we're on day one of 18. I am on day 4 of Dinner at Mahogany, so we can continue this conversation there, Rachel. I will be there every night, sitting at the bar.
Look for Chris Mannix, cold, unfeeling.
Drinking his old-fashioned, having his steak.
Boom.
Living life.
Old school.